Hello, I'm Paul Single, Managing Director here at City National Rochdale, and welcome to Economic Perspectives. Labor data that has been released over the past few months has shown that demand for workers is much weaker than previously thought. It started in early August when the July labor report was released, showing a gain of 73,000, below the expectation of 104,000. But more importantly, the two previous months were revised down by a staggering 258,000 workers. The president quickly terminated the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics and has recommended a replacement who will need to be confirmed by the Senate. Then, in early September, the BLS released results of their annual benchmark revision, which showed an estimate of 911,000 less workers than previously thought. That is for the 12 months that ended in March of 2025. It's also the largest revision on record. In this month's video, we'll look into some of the issues causing the drop in worker demand, the reasons why the revisions are getting larger, and how the Fed is responding to the slower pace of payroll growth. Now, let's look at some charts. Here we are looking at the unemployment rate. It is currently standing at 4.3%. In this chart, which goes back to the 1950s, is showing a light blue horizontal band, which represents a range of 4 to 4.5% unemployment. That's a level that many economists view as full employment. And it's rare for the unemployment rate to be within that band or below for a sustained period of time. It did so in the early 1950s and late 1960s when the country was at war in Korea and then Vietnam. There was a draft, and a lot of young men were in the military not looking for a job. That was a technical issue that drove down the unemployment rate. This time, on the right side of the chart, the rate is low, in part due to baby boomers retiring faster than younger generations coming into the workforce, but it's mainly due to the fact that this economy is really strong. Now, the unemployment rate gives us the relationship between those who are working and those who would like to be working. So the unemployment rate at this level is not a problem for the Fed. But in a separate survey, which measures the net monthly change in non-farm payrolls, it is showing near stagnant growth. The columns in this chart show the monthly change, which tends to be volatile. So the dark blue line is a 3-month moving average, which smooths out the data. It is quite clear there is a slowdown in hiring. In the past 3 months, payroll growth has averaged just 29,000 per month. That's a significant decline from the beginning of the year, when there was a very positive view based on the new pro-growth administration. Back then, the monthly average was 232,000. And this monthly gain is well below the estimated 100,000 gain that's needed to keep the unemployment rate stable. This is why the Fed is concerned. The Fed has a dual mandate. It is a congressional statutory directive for them. They need to pursue two primary goals of maximum employment and stable prices. Since 2022, when the Consumer Price Index had jumped to 9.1%, the Fed has been primarily focused on inflation, keeping monetary policy restrictive and trying to bring inflation down to its target level of 2%. Although inflation is still above the Fed's target, the Fed has grown more concerned with the weakening demand for workers. Another reason why the Fed is concerned is the types of jobs that are being filled. This chart shows the percentage change over the past year in the number of workers in 11 major categories that the BLS monitors. At the top are the biggest increases: education and healthcare, along with leisure and hospitality. Both of those are considered non-cyclical jobs. There is a constant need to hire in these professions. An economy that is looking to expand at a faster pace would have job growth in cyclical jobs like manufacturing, professional and business services, and information technology. Okay, so that's where we stand on labor now. Regarding the monthly revisions, this chart measures the revisions of the past 2 months. Clearly, they have been larger in the past few years compared to the pre-pandemic times. You can see that the red circle over on the right, the July revision, clearly sticks out like a sore thumb. down 258,000, much more than the 12-month average of just 30,000, which included that big move in July. The major reason for the larger revisions is the poor response to the survey. This chart shows the response rate hovering around just 40%. That's about 1/3 less than the rate was before the pandemic. Without that data, the BLS has to make estimates. Sometimes those estimates need to be adjusted. And revisions are also due to responses that are being returned a month or two late, so they have to be revised. Or the original response gets corrected. That too will cause a revision in the data. There's also an annual revision. This chart shows the annual revision to the data. You can see in the last 2 years it's been much more extreme than the previous years. Let me take a moment to explain how this works. The monthly labor report is not a census, which would be an actual count of all workers. Instead, it's a survey. The BLS gets some actual hard data on workers from businesses and government agencies. The rest is based on estimates. The BLS surveys over 600,000 business entities asking how many workers they have. That accounts for about 40 million workers, which is about a quarter of the approximately 160 million workers in the non-farm payroll report. The other 120 million come from statistical models that they have. So there's a lot of assumptions that are made. Now, let me put some context on this. National polls that we hear about, like Gallup, and there are many others, their survey sample is somewhere between 1 to 5,000. So you can see by comparison, the labor report from the BLS is enormous. Once a year, the BLS will calibrate the data against tax records, specifically money paid into unemployment insurance. That data accounts for about 95% of all workers. In late August or early September, the BLS will release their primary estimate of the annual adjustment, and it gets refined and will be finalized in the first quarter of next year. The major portion of the revision is usually due to something called the birth-death adjustment. Birth refers to new businesses, death refers to companies going out of business. This is a difficult and large cohort to estimate. The BLS cannot send a survey request to a company that they don't know exists. They have to wait until the analysis of the tax records to know that they exist. Also, they don't know when a business closes. They know when no survey is returned, but was that because the business closed, or was it that they just never got around to responding? So the BLS makes assumptions based on recent history, on the number of businesses that are starting and the number of businesses that have closed. The hard part is that's not a constant number. As the economy moves through the economic cycle, those numbers will vary greatly. That is the major cause of the large variance. Considering how chaotic the economy has been in this post-pandemic world, it is no surprise that there have been large adjustments made to this birth-death adjustment. So what does all this mean for the Fed? Well, as I mentioned, they've become more focused on labor. Thus, they have taken a more dovish stance. They cut the federal funds rate by 25 basis points at their recent meeting in mid-September. They plan on 2 more cuts this year. That will bring the median rate down to 3 5/8%. That's 25 basis points lower than they thought back in June. They also plan another cut of 25 basis points next year, and also another 25 basis points in 2027. And that will bring the rate down to 3 1/8%, which is viewed as neutral policy. Clearly, this move to focus on the labor market will delay the Fed's ability to bring inflation down to target. But it is extremely bullish news for the economy. I'm Paul Single. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next month.